Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 15th and final round of the Assetto Corsa Aussie Down Under Series, spanning the years 2020 and 2021. Apologies if you can hear a little bit of a commotion in the background here. That's what having to deal with some young children under 3 has to do with you sometimes, and part of the reason why I have decided to step away after this series. Unfortunately, that is the way things go sometimes when you're a parent, and some things need to be devoted a little bit more attention to. But what we're going to devote some attention to for the next hour and 3/4 is what happens around this Newcastle street circuit for tonight's finale. It definitely is still a championship fight. 29 points is all that is separating the top 2 contenders at the moment. But it's not just the top 2 who are fighting for us here. 3rd and 4th place is still up for grabs, as well as a number of other positions down the order. And the good news tonight, we've got a nice healthy turnout of 10 cars so far. And hopefully we might get a few more. And it's good to see that a few of the drivers that haven't been here for a couple of weeks have turned up to support the final event. Great to have you on board, and great to have you along in the live stream. As much as we're ready to play the final countdown, we'd probably get pinged for a copyright infringement if we did that, Mr. Brendan Ross. But those of you who know me, my name is Steve DeVries, and it's been an interesting experience broadcasting in Assetto Corsa for the first time throughout the 15 rounds of the championship. We get it a little bit better and a little bit better every week, and I would like to give thanks to John Wright for the opportunity to broadcast the series over the 15 rounds that have taken place, and it's been a good experience getting used to broadcasting in a different sim racing platform. Well, season calendar, as you saw many times across the season, that's where we have been and where we are now. Of course, that little event down the bottom there, the Newcastle Street Circuit last week, read the 6th of February. But due to the possibility of some heavy storm activity in the West Australian region where the server resides, it's been brought forward, and we're here for the first and only time this season on a Friday night. And, well, it must be a little bit of magic in the air, because Friday night seems to have brought everybody out to have a run around the track for 2 lots of what will be 20 laps tonight. And, of course, there's been a big mixture of different circuits. Of course, the combination of street circuits, permanent and temporary. Then there's also the permanent road course circuits. The overseas legs as well, the Singapore and Bahrain rounds that took place. Of course, the triple header of a night race across 3 consecutive weeks at the end of November. And then all the way back home on Australian soil for the final 5 rounds of this year's championship. Coming into tonight, the most important thing to note is what the point standings are, and we will be updating these as we go along throughout the night so we can see where everybody is placed. We'll be doing it live every so often along the course of the pair of races, but this is how it sits after 14 of 15 rounds completed. Shannon Wright heads the way much the same way that he has done for the bulk of the season. The only time that he did not lead the championship was after the Phillip Island round, which was the first round that he missed. That put Nathan Higginson in front, and then over the remaining couple of rounds after that, he slowly worked his way back in front, and he has not been headed since. But the margin is much reduced from what it was a couple of weeks ago. As we just said a few minutes ago, it is 29 points. Maximum of 90 points on offer for winning both races tonight, but if you come second, you happen to get only a couple of points less. So Higginson needs a little bit of a miracle here to get in front of Shannon Wright and really have a good solid run and try and take the fight to him in the pair of races tonight. 3rd place, not over and done with by any stretch of the imagination. John Wright, one of only 2 men to have contested every round of this season, along with Nathan Higginson, currently holds 3rd place at the moment by a mere 8 points from Dane Liccardo. The word coming through after the last round was due to the issues with the track and Dane not being able to serve his drive-through penalty, although we did clearly capture him on the broadcast. He was effectively DQ'd from that race, but good sporting gesture. He has been awarded points for the 8th place finish that he would have otherwise been, because he was at the back of the field anyway, and it keeps him in that hunt for 3rd place in the standings. Jamie Nankervis can't see listed on the settings at the server list at the moment, so it looks like he is not here this round. So that means he's, while mathematically in the hunt for position 4, probably a bit of a bridge too far to obtain it, and he's probably going nowhere in 5th place. Terry Marwood is here. Good to see Terry is here, and he probably needs that bit of luck too, because Brian Walsh had been making a late charge in the XD Falcon, and well, that'll be an interesting battle to see who has the line honours between the two elder statesmen there. You can see that is only 11 points the difference between the two of them. Brett Willis in 8th place, and he's missed a number of the rounds in the last couple of weeks, and doesn't look like he is listed there at the moment. Actually, just have seen Jamie Nankervis pop into the server, so he's going to contest tonight. Glenn Miles and Termo both in the server tonight as well, and they could potentially jump Brett if they have a good run tonight. Both of them are mathematically in the hunt to jump up to 8th and 9th, or depending on where they go and what they do. They've had a good solid run tonight. It's not by any stretch of the imagination conceivable that they will advance a couple of positions as well. So it's very, very tight between a couple of positions on those standings, and we are going to be doing our best to keep tabs on where everything sits throughout the night. It's going to be frantic. We're going to have to do our best to do it, but we will definitely do it. On to tonight's race, and pair of races I should say, sorry. A pair of 20 lap races around this street circuit. Lap times in practice are around the minute 18, 19, 20 mark. So you can do your math from there as to roughly how long this is going to take. Again, no pit stops, the same as per Winton just a week ago. So John Wright had changed the rules just a little bit, just to spice the racing up, and it did do wonders. So medium tyre has to be used at all times, and the pit stops are no longer a requirement. You can pit if you need to, but you do not have to undertake the compulsory stop. 2.6 kilometres. The last time we saw this circuit in anger was all the way back in 2019 in the V8 supercars in real life, and there are 12 corners on this circuit. It looks like there's a little bit more because there's a few acute little bends in this one, and a few hairpin bends, a couple of 90-degree right corners, some off-camber corners as well. It's bumpy, there's inclinations, there's the tram tracks that they had to pave over at one point as well. And the opening corner will be a very interesting one because of where the pit lane feeds. There's a few drivers that have just made sure that they can't take the inside line or the wrong side of the barrier that separates the pit lane and the racetrack, because if you do that, you're going to find yourself with a pretty hefty whack from the stewards after the race. The start line's on Wharf Road. They take a left turn to go up Watt Street, up the hill towards turn number 2, and then along Shoreline Esplanade through the S's, through a couple of the back streets of Newcastle, through the 9-degree right bends, and then down the hill, down through Nobby's Road, all the way down to the hairpin, and then a short blast along Horseshoe Beach Road, followed by a right-hand sweeping bend that brings you back onto the main straight. We'll take an onboard lap a little bit later on when the qualifying session gets underway, which is about a minute away. I'm not sure which street you're referring to here, Rhodey. We were talking about the different streets, so we'll run through them while we do the hot lap with whoever jumps out of the pit lane first. There's a couple that you're probably, I'm not sure which one of those streets that I mentioned you're probably a bit unsure about. Maybe I got my words minced up or something. I have a tendency to do that. We are just waiting for about another 30 seconds, and then we'll be right to go into the qualifying session for 20 minutes, which in some cases in the recent past has meant that a number of drivers have done almost the full equivalent of a race distance in the qualifying session. So we will see how many laps these drivers can get in. I would imagine someone's going to probably get about 10 laps at the best, depending on how many they butcher and how many times they come back to the pits. And looks like we are about to get underway here as we flip over to see what's happening, and they're all beginning to leave the pit lane. So Higginson has gone out. There's Termo leaving the lane. Oh, and a little bit of shenanigans going on there. Liccardo going past one of the Volvos. And as we keep an eye out, here comes another one of the Volvos. So that's the second one. That's the Nankervis car, which means the first one that went out was Shannon Wright. Brian Walsh on the move. And that leaves the two Volvos of Wedding and John Wright in the pits. There goes Glenn Miles leaving the lane. And now the third one of the Volvos leaving the lane, which will be the Terry Marwood car. There he goes, car 10. And John Wright leaves the lane now. So what we'll do is we'll just have a little bit of a brief pause here for a moment, and we will wait for the cars to come around and see who we can pick up. We'll do things a little bit differently. Actually, Brian Walsh has exited and gone back to the pits, and now he's on the move again because we saw him just a few moments ago. Hard on the pit lane rev limiter. And let's see if we can pick up one of our drivers on the track. Here we go. So here's Nathan Higginson. This is the first of the flying laps. Let's go from the roof cam. So here's down to turn one. A little bit of a lock up. You could hear the tyres squeal. So from Wharf Road, makes the left-hand bend and now heads up the hill, up Watt Street, W-A-T-T, roadie. Watt, as in Kathy Watt, the cyclist. Braking for turn three. Missed the apex by a little bit there. And now through the left and right-hand bends of Shoreline Esplanade, heading down the hill. And they get a little bit tighter, and now they get into the 90-degree right-handers. So Zara Street, turning left onto Zara Street, and then right onto Scott Street. And then the third of the 90-degree right-handers, the left-handers, comes onto Parnell Place. And then up and over the rise here, and then back down the hill, which is Nobby's Road. And then got to pick your line right here. Follow the natural curve of the road out to the right-hand side. Don't hit the fence for the hairpin. There's Brian Walsh parked in an awkward position, and Higginson has looped it. So obviously with the result of Walshy being in the wrong spot there. And that's a little bit of an infringement for Walsh. And then the final corner here, coming off of Horseshoe Beach Road through the final proper corner. The right-hand bend bringing you back onto Wharf Road. So Higginson wouldn't have been too happy with that lap. A little bit loose, missed a few apexes, and then to boot was probably balked, I would think is probably the right word, by Brian Walsh at the exit of the hairpin. So at the moment, time's slowly starting to trickle in. It's Shannon Wright with the leading time at the moment, 19.614. Oh, big moment for Higginson. Big moment coming down Shoreline Esplanade. That wipes him out. That wipes out Shannon Wright. And they both go back to the pits for another try. Now, fastest time we saw in practice was Shannon Wright belting out a mid-18. A lot of drivers in practice were in the 19s. There was about 6 or 7 drivers separated by a second. So a few of them were the HMR VL Commodores of this man, Dane Liccardo, and Nathan Higginson. They were in the 19s. So too Lewis Wedding was in there as well. A couple of the Volvos had also found some good pace. And then Shannon Wright was a late arrival on the scene and trumped them all with an initial flying lap at an 18 point in the mids. So I'm going to keep an eye to see what he does. Liccardo goes top now, 19.289. And that's a 3 and a little bit tenths quicker than Shannon Wright. Termo's put himself up into third place, a 19.8. And he is currently the last of the men on track in the early stages of this session under the 1 minute 20 second barrier. We've still got a couple of drivers sat up in the pits. We have Lewis Wedding aboard the Outworld Broadcasting BMW 635 and Jamie Nankervis in the final of the 3 Lawn Bowls Volvos that have been entered today, the Gold Coast Lawn Bowls Racing Team. And he's only just arrived on the scene too, so I'd imagine getting himself prepared and ready to go. May not actually be a bad ploy to start from the back for this one if you're not planning to qualify. It might be one of those moments that you can avoid potential carnage at turn 1, or maybe even at turn 2. This Termo had a bit of a sideways movement coming down the hill into the horseshoe hairpin. And, I was about to say Dano needs to be a bit careful there to make sure that he doesn't impede Termo. And no improvement from Termo. Actually, there was an improvement from Termo that time around. He shaved another couple of tenths off that time. So he's gone from a 19.289 to a 19.276. And Liccardo on a 19.289. So Termo launches himself up the order into third place overall. So showing the Volvo speed here. It was a track we expected. Oops, sorry. We've lost our audio. Now we've got our audio back. There we go. Looks like we've had this issue before. Thank you, Dimmy, for pointing that one out in the live chat. But very good to see that Termo jumped to the top of the tree, but not for long. Shannon Wright goes to P1, now into the 18s. 1 minute 18.931. And we have remarked over the last couple of weeks leading up to the final 2 rounds of the season that the last 2 tracks on the calendar in Winton and Newcastle were expected to favour the Volvo heavily. Higginson did his best last time out at Winton to take away one of the race wins with the Grand Schlem, having qualified pole, taken fastest lap, led every lap, and the race win. But he couldn't repeat in race number 2, was caught up in a bit of a technical glitch, which meant that the points gap opened up to 29 as a result of Wright taking the win in that second race and Higginson finishing 4th. But just some sections of the Newcastle circuit coming down Shoreline Esplanade and through the 90-degree left and right handers, as the Volvo has a lot more mid-corner pace. It's able to carry the speed through those sections of the track, whereas the VL has to take a lot more speed off, scrub a lot more speed off in the straight line and try and find the power to get out of the corner. Early in the acceleration phase, it sort of hasn't quite got the right amount of mumbo to really launch off some of these slower corners and make up all the time lost that the Volvo gains through the mid-corner speed. But it's better in a straight line, so coming down through sections of a circuit like this, the Volvo might not be too bad, but especially dragging up the main street down Wharf Road to the start-finish line, it definitely has legs in a straight line. Then going up the hill from turn 1 to turn 2 shows its strength as well. Okay, 10th time on the board. Lewis Wedding, which is the broadcaster one you can see there in 4th place on your left-hand timing tree, has moved up into position 4. So his initial flying lap was a 1 minute 20.1, so not too far out of a sub 120, and hanging the arse end out, having a big dip, riding the curb all the way on the inside, full fist of opposite lock, missed the apex, just kissed the wall like a drifter would be kissing the outside cone at the first of the 90-degree corners, and getting it millimetre perfect on the exit of the final one. Yeah, hasn't been able to get the turn in for that one there, but he's done a good job of, I was about to say, he's done a good job of staying away from the wall, but the wall actually gave him a little bit of a benefit there. It actually helped him point the right direction. A little bit of an untidy lap in the second half of the lap, but having a real crack at top billing here, and he does a 19.6, so found 0.5 of a second on that lap. Not a bad time at all, and he becomes the fourth man to go under 1 minute 20. The man behind him in Nathan Higginson has not been able to replicate what he did in the practice session and getting under a 20. He's a 121.7 at the moment. He's actually behind not only Terry Mulville, but behind Glenn Miles, who's had a fantastic run over the last couple of rounds. And Higginson doing the same thing Wedding did, drifting it sideways right out to the fence. Going the old Dennis Cometti centimetre perfect. And not tagging the wall in the process. A few different lines people are electing to take coming around this part of the course. Some people like to take the tight line through the preceding corner through turn 10 before you get to the hairpin, and some drivers try and take a wider line and then sort of straighten it up before they get to the hairpin, but most of them, as we're seeing already, are giving the wall on the right hand side a fair rub when they do so. Right, that's a PB lap for Higginson. That's a 21.0, so he's lowered his best mark, but not by a hell of a lot. Shannon Wright drops the benchmark even further. Now, this is the sort of the practice time that he had set just about 15 minutes or so ago, just right at the death at the end of the practice session, going into the 18s. And the closest man to him now is Termo on a 1 minute 19.2, and just ahead of Dane Liccardo as well on a 19.2, who hasn't been able to improve in the last couple of minutes. So there's only one driver yet to set a time. That's the Jamie Nankervis number 018 car in the pit lane still. He hasn't taken any or turned any laps in anger so far in this session. There's a PB in there just popped up from Terry Marwood as well. So he's gone into the 19s now as well, the 19.673. So he's gone back to the pits, and so too is Lewis Wedding. So those two you can see there, 4th and 5th on the standings. Very much locked together as well. And looks like this might be, is it Shannon Wright again? Yes, it is. There's an 18.7 that time around. Only 2/10 quicker, 2/10 slower than his previous best. And Glenn Miles has also set a PB on the last lap as well that he did. So he's now gone into a 121.466. He's still 0.4 behind Higginson, but it's definitely a commendable effort. As we said, Glenn Miles has had a pretty decent run over the last couple of weeks. He's featured on the podium twice in the last 3 rounds with a 2nd and a 3rd place. And that's been punctuated by, out of the preceding 6 races across the last 3 rounds, he's had 4 4th places, a 3rd and a 2nd, and then before that at Calder Park it was a 6th and a 7th. Earlier on in the season wasn't so fortunate, but he definitely has had, by his own admission in the interviews last round as well, starting to have the car come alive and just starting to feel really comfortable. Oh, that's a bit wide, and that's a tyre fence, Shannon. So that will be the end of that qualifying lap for him. I believe this might actually be an out lap for Termo. Gearing himself up, but slow through the final corner and try and plant it. And let's see if we can take a ride on the wild side with Termo. If we can get our cameras up. Doesn't look like we're having much success here at the moment, trying to get the onboard cameras going for some reason or another. Behind him is Nathan Higginson. So here we go. We've got the roof cam. Oh, and at the right time too, because we got to see him miss the apex completely at turn 2 and get a fistful of fence on the right-hand side of that car. You can see they're not using as much curb through some parts of the track as a number of the other drivers. So that was turn 5, where he didn't get the last of the S's. And through turn 6, 7, this is turn 8. Then up and over the hill. Through turn 9, it's pretty much an inconsequential corner. Turn 10's this big sweeping left-hander. Misses the fence. One of the very few drivers that hasn't given that outside fence a rub in this qualifying session. Turn 11's the hairpin, and then the final corner is turn 12. Gets right up on the curb. Uses all of the available concrete and apron available. Gets down to the line, and the lap from Turmo was a 19.5, so it was a 0.3 of a second. That's Brian Walsh down the escape road, I think, if I could see him down there. Yes, it is. And what's he doing there? He's buried in the fence. Well, actually, so far buried that we couldn't even see it on the trackside camera, but he's engaging reverse gear here, is he? Or is he just rolling back? Is he just going to give up the ghost, or what's he going to do there? He's the last of the runners with a time to his name at the moment. So let's see if we can get an onboard. Here comes John Wright, so he might have a bit more of a better visual look at what's going on with Brian Walsh here. And yeah, there he is down the escape road again. So actually can't see what Walsh is doing to himself here. He's in a bit of an awkward position. Not sure if he's had a moment or a technical issue of some nature. But he is probably not going to get another lap in unless he goes back to the pits and then takes to the track again. Alright, so we've got the final 3 minutes of qualifying to decide pole. Turmo's just plonked in a sub 1 minute 19 lap, and he's hit the fence on the exit of turn 1. But he must have been carrying a lot of speed. He's done an 18.959, so he's 0.4 of a second precisely behind Shannon Wright. So very, very good lap from Turmo. That might see him safe in P2 because he was under a bit of threat here from Liccardo if he could have put a lap together. It's a 20.0 that lap. It's a nice bit of apex there, but it's carried too much speed and hits the tyre barrier. And he'll have to be quick if he wants to get one more lap in. Who's on circuit? So John Wright goes through. There's at least another 2 laps for him. There'll be 1 for Liccardo. Shannon Wright will have at least another 2 laps in him if he's fueled for it. So he's just coming up the back side of the circuit now, just exiting onto Parnell Place. About to head over the rise and down the hill. Terry Marwood's about to say, is he starting a flying lap or is he coming in? No, he's coming in. So let's Higginson go through. Man in second place in the championship really needs to pull a good lap out here. He's languishing in 6th place, and he was so close to getting the belt on the tyre barrier there at turn 1. He needs a good lap here. It is a further, what we're looking at the times here, a further 1.4 seconds to Terry Marwood. As Wright does an 18.473, so new fastest lap in this qualifying session. And I think probably just showboating now, just showing the Volvo's ultimate pace. He's safe and probably doesn't need to do another lap. Higginson will have a chance to get another lap if his tyres are in a good state. And if he doesn't butcher this one up. So close to some of these fences, just giving it every possible thing. Little bit of a mid-corner wiggle, tap the back of the wall, or the back of the car on the wall. It probably didn't hamper him too much, but it was the corner exit off the hairpin that probably has cost him the time there. And he needs to square the car up, get all the power of that engine to the pavement through the rear wheels, and it was a 19.854 that lap. So it was a PB, so he's under the 1 minute 20 mark. But that is about as good as he's going to do. So he's not going to advance any further. So if he had been able to press on with that and keep the momentum going, he would have maybe had a shot at 5th place, maybe 4th. But as it stands, he is the 6th and final man under the 1 minute 20 barrier in the timing. And the checkered flag is out. So Lewis Wedding coming through Scott Street onto Parnell Place now. So he's got this lap to go, and he is the last man that is on the circuit that can set a competitive lap. Can he improve it all? Current time is a 1:19.621, and that's quite a nice line through the hairpin. Probably one of the better lines we've seen from everybody in this qualifying session so far. And a nice clean exit onto Wharf Road. But what is the time? Line comes up, and it is a 19.645. So it actually wasn't too bad at the end of the day for Wedding. He was pretty close to the time that he'd set in, or earlier in the session rather. But now we enter a little bit of a holding phase before we get ready for the first of the 20-lap races tonight. So we recap your order. There were 2 men that went under the 1 minute 19 barrier in the qualifying session. It was Shannon Wright with an 18.473, really showing the Volvo's pace. Termo in the 2nd place position. Both of them completed 12 laps, and Termo's time was an 18.959. So he was just under half a second shy of Shannon Wright's time at the end of the day. Dane Liccardo was the first of 4 men to get under the 1 minute 20 barrier, so a 19.289 for Liccardo, a 19.621 for Lewis Wedding. Terry Marwood a 1:19.673, and Higginson managed to get into the 19s on his very last flying lap, a 19.854, but it wasn't enough to jump him up the order the way he really needs to jump up at the moment. He needs to be fighting up there for a race win, in this one especially. And then 7th place was Glenn Miles. Commendable effort from Glenn Miles again. 1 minute 21.466. And we're going to be keeping an eye on him because his consistency has been something that's been very, very good over the last couple of rounds. Brian Munn and John Wright, not much in between them at the end of the day. 23.234 and a 23.254. So 0.02 of a second was all that separated Munn's VL Commodore and Wright's BMW 635. Brian Walsh wasn't actually that far behind them either. He was a 123.394, so only a 1/10 and a half behind both Munn and Wright. So that could be a little interesting battle between Munn, Wright and Walsh in this one. And the only man that did not set a lap time in that session was Jamie Nankervis. We'll keep an eye out to see if he takes the start at the rear of grid. We'll take a short break here, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in a few moments' time for the opening of the 2 20-lap races tonight. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Not too far away from seeing some cars gridding up. It's about 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So there is the timer that says 2 minutes remaining until we get the green light for this race. And they're all starting to grid up. Hopefully we'll have everybody take the start. So 11 cars for this one, which is great to see. A little bit of a good turnout for the final round. Now, just a shout out to some guys in the live chat that are continuing to participate. Good to see you all there, guys. Good to see some good patronage on the Friday night. And the one thing I need to keep a reminder out for is, can somebody in the live chat please remind me about halfway around this first lap that we need to take the safety car off the grid. Once or twice this season we've left it on, and drivers have come across and nearly had a heart attack. So it's one of the things, unfortunately, with the Assetto Corsa that we have to do, is to take the thing away. And you can see there it is from the bonnet cam, looking at the back of the grid. And there's the onboard cam, and looking at the back of Brian Walsh on the right, and John Wright directly in front of us. And we're sitting here waiting to take this start. And alongside that car is the Jamie Nankervis mobile at the back there. We like to keep up with the action, but unfortunately, the way the broadcasting works is the safety car effectively becomes the broadcast car. So just watching the countdown timer on the right here, about 20 seconds remaining till we start seeing some lights. Dan Liccardo got his lights on. Speaking of lights, I'm not sure if he's waiting there. Whoop, here we go. A little bit sooner than what we thought. So, signal is out. It's time to knuckle down and concentrate on the streets of Newcastle for 20 laps. And away we go. Good launch from the front too, but have a look at Lewis Wedding. He got a pretty good launch as well from, what was that, 4th place on the grid. And he's muscled out Turmo, and he's muscling on and boxing on with Dane Liccardo here. It is to give him a bit of room, a little bit of contact. Nathan Higginson's had a pretty good start as well. He might out-drag Wedding up the hill here, up Watt Street into turn 2. And, half-hearted lunge. He thought about it, then backed out of it, then went for it, and he takes away 3rd place. So good start for Higginson, making up 3 spots already on the opening lap. And we will now take the safety car away. There we go. So I remembered to do it. But already Shannon Wright making a break for it. And doing what he needs to do out there in front. There's been an exchange position a bit further back as well. Brian Munn and John Wright are coming together. They've had a bit of a tangle somewhere there. And that's actually, where's that? That's down at the entrance to Zara Street. So that's down at around turn 6, and they've had it coming together. Oh, and Higginson's had a moment too. Sorry, guys, we didn't see what happened there. That was a bit weird. I just had having a look at the Munn incident, and then all of a sudden Higginson flashed up yellow. Now, whether he's had a spin or something coming through the hairpin, or maybe he's been tagged, I'm not quite sure. We didn't see it. We only saw the aftermath there, but he's managed to hang on to his 3rd place for the moment. Glenn Miles, what a start he's had, and he's gone, and he's hit the fence. Carnage on the opening laps of this one. He's got to grab reverse. That's reverse. There you go. Just back it back nice and easy. And you've got plenty of gap to to Brian Walsh there, and Brian gives him a bit of space. So, wow. That's an interesting one, that one. Wedding was on the one side or another, and I think Glenn might have just outbraked himself a little bit there. And he definitely will have hurt. And now Brian Walsh is all over his good mate here. Now we've been remarking that, and there's, Wedding had an incident too. So not the only victim of that part of the circuit down there at turn 6. So Wright and John Wright and Brian Munn caught up there. Lewis Wedding now caught up there as well. Higginson's had a spin, and Miles has hit the fence. So there's been 5 of the 11 cars have had issues in this one. Now I'm noticing as well that it looks like it said final lap very briefly for a minute. I think that might have been because Jamie Nankervis hasn't taken the start and his car was taken off the grid and put back to the pits. So he's showing to me as that he's in pit lane. And all the carnage in the world going on right now. So really, there's the only two drivers that are on track that were close enough was Wright and Munn, but Munn's had another issue coming down Nobby's road toward the hairpin, and that's a bit of an unusual spot to have one. And Brian Walsh has had a massive incident off of the final corner. That car looks like it's got a puncture or it's had a suspension failure or something, and he's had to go to the pits and sort that one out. All right, 2 laps in, and a lot of carnage already. Smooth sailing out in front for Shannon Wright. So, standing lap times were not too bad. Dane Liccardo actually has the fastest lap at the moment at 1:19.0. You can see there he's just dropped to about 3 seconds in arrears. He was about 1.9 last time around, so he's lost a bit of ground. And Wright sets his best lap at a 19.435 and Liccardo 19.8 that time around. So at the moment, Liccardo is the only one that can really hold a candle to Shannon Wright in terms of staying with him. His teammate Higginson has got an edge on Termo at the minute, and third place is unfortunately not going to be enough at the moment. He needs a race win in this one, or if he doesn't get a race win, he really needs a bit of assistance in the reverse grid race for something to go wrong to have any shot at this title. I'm going to start plugging in our championship implications as it sits right now. So having a look at where some of the drivers in the top 4 at the moment are, because that's what we need to know. So Shannon Wright currently with a race victory penciled in against his name. With Nathan Higginson in third, it would open the margin up by a further 5 points. It would open it up to 34. You get 40 for a race win. And then it would mean a lot of help required in race number 2. John Wright currently down the order in 8th place, and then Dane Liccardo's current 2nd place finish would actually see Liccardo slip ahead of John Wright to the tune of 12 points, so it would end up being a 20-point swing as it stands currently if positions were to remain as they currently are. Elsewhere down the order, we have a look to see what people like Glenn Miles are up to. So he was in 7th, is currently in 7th place at the moment. And Termo's had an incident at turn 1, but he's far enough ahead of Miles to not worry so much about that. But 7th place finish for Glenn Miles would actually close the margin down to Brett Willis to the tune of just 5 points. Of course, with Brett not here this weekend, that is another position that Glenn would get with a nice solid finish in race number 2. And Termo in position number 6 is the other man that we probably need to take a look at in this equation, because he would then close to within 8 points of Glenn Miles, and he would only be 13 points back of Brett Willis. So both of them would be knocking on the door of jumping up the order, and maybe even Termo, if he would finish ahead of Glenn Miles in the next race as well, could find himself leapfrogging both Willis and Miles. So plenty to play for as the lap count winds down in both races tonight. And the margin is just starting to get eased out here. And Wright's got it out to 5 seconds now, and he's already got lap traffic because... Oh, boy! And that was mighty close. That was a big scare for the race leader, and Liccardo the same. Higginson gets through unscathed. Munn has caught the inside of the wall at turn 3, spun the car, and right in front of the race leader, and just trying to execute the J-turn. Didn't quite pull it off, but at least it's now pointing in a decent direction that he can get going again. And he needs to probably step aside here, Brian Munn, and just let Lewis Wedding through. And Wedding will take the opportunity there. And through he goes. So I'll tell you what, Shannon Wright probably would have had my favourite word in that one, and I know Matt Cecil and a few others in the live chat know what this one is. We call it the Sea Bomber. It's called conniptions. And he would have been having all sorts of conniptions as he had that VL Commodore spin right before his very eyes. 19.326 that last time around for the race leader. 20.185 for Liccardo behind. So margin opened up by 0.8 of a second that time around. Higginson was a tenth quicker than Liccardo time around, and he's had another moment at turn 1. So we saw him have an issue there in qualifying. And he's had another moment in race trim. So that one will hurt as well. And now all sorts of sideways. Just overdriving the car here. And he can see the possibility of his top of the pile finish in the series. Slipping and sliding away here with every moment that car breaks traction and goes sideways. I think goes the chances of Higginson winning this championship. It was going to be a tall order anyway. Mathematically it was possible. Oh, and there's another incident as well. And now Wedding's coming along as well. And there wasn't much that Higginson could do there. But that now puts Wedding through into third place. And it now puts Marwood and Termo within striking distance of Higginson. So that now changes the scenario again, with Higginson losing a further couple of points and slipping down into what is currently fourth place. So that's another 5 points that goes begging. And speaking of things going begging, there's another issue for Brian Munn at the hairpin. So PB for Terry Marwood that lap around, 20.707. And he'll get a sniff here that Higginson's having all sorts of problems. And there it is again, into the fence at 1. And this is starting to get real ugly for car number 00. Now, if I was him in this situation, I need to calm it down. Need to make sure I get to the flag here and then take my chances in the reverse grid race, because that's where, if anything's going to happen, it's going to be difficult for Shannon Wright to try and get through the field. Depending on where Higginson has the starting position, if he can make up some good positions on the opening lap, starting ahead of him in the full reverse grid race, might bode well for him, but he needs to at least keep as many points in the bank as he can. So it's very, very important he keeps Marwood and Termo behind him, who are locked in their own little private battle at the minute. And Higginson's wide, and now it's 3 wide. Oh, and that's a little bit awkward. I don't know whether Higginson probably should have backed out of that one and let them have it, or whether or not Marwood maybe was a little bit too greedy on the corner exit and maybe just opened the steering a bit. But what it has done is it puts him under siege from Termo as they now head up the hill toward turn 2. So the margin as it stands right now, championship wise, for Higginson being in 6th place, is now out to 44 points. So with 40 points on offer for the race win for this current 20 lap up, and 50 points for the reverse grid race, you would hate to be in the shoes of Nathan Higginson right now, because it almost becomes impossible for him to win the title without Shannon Wright not being able to complete the next race. So we now have Brian Walsh as an official retirement from this one. So we'll mark him off on our scoring sheet as it did not finish as it stands right now. If he gets back in and starts completing some laps again, he's going to be able to score some points, although it would be for a 10th place finish. And we're going to put Jamie Nankervis in the book here as it did not start. So this is the most interesting battle we have on track at the moment. This is the one over 4th and 5th place. Lewis Wedding's another 6 seconds up the road from these two guys at the moment. And the halfway distance here. And it looks like Brian Walsh may have been able to get himself back into the game here. And maybe we were a bit too overzealous to pull the pin on him so early. He's at the pit lane there, and I'm just wondering whether he was trying to get himself sorted before he goes back to track. And now Glenn Miles has gone ahead of Nathan Higginson, so this really gets worse for Higginson. He's made another mistake. Has now dropped to 7th place. So that now means the margin at the end of this one becomes 49 points with a race to run and 50 points on offer to the winner of the next race. So it's gone in a completely opposite direction to what he wanted. And now we're going to plug in the likes of Terry Marwood with a 4th place finish for Terry and also for Termo, who is currently situated in position number 5. And see what that does to our standings as well. So what that does for Terry Marwood with Brian Walsh still in the pits. There he is. I'm not sure what's going on there. Grabbing reverse gear and trying to get going. I'm wondering whether he's got, I don't know what he's doing. That's where the victor normally celebrates, Brian. So I'm not sure what you're up to there, son. But we'll see we'll come back and check in on him a bit later. So what the finishing positions do at the moment, as they stand right now, is that Liccardo, we said, moves ahead of John Wright. His first car 1 lap down. With Glenn Miles 7th place, Termo in 5th. Actually means that they've moved up the order a little bit. So Glenn Miles is still only 5 points in arrears of Brett Willis before the next race commences, and moves Termo to within 10 points of Brett Willis as well. So all going to plan for them. And Higginson and Miles have exchanged positions again. So Higginson got him back and Miles has had another go there. And now it's flipping back the other way with Miles going down to 7th place. So it was 6th very briefly. It's now back to 7th, and Higginson back up to 6th on the standings. Just getting a comment from Matt Cecil. Looks like maybe Walshy having a bit of the broken steering or something. I'm wondering if it's actually a gearbox thing, because he has had a gearbox issue at the previous round at Calder Park and had to retire from that one. I'm not surprised if it's the same thing again. But he's the only man that hasn't completed enough laps at the moment. Having a look at Shannon Wright. Got a really, really healthy margin at the moment. And looking at the quickest lap times, he has done an 18, so he's done an 18.915, which is fastest lap of the race. Liccardo's quickest lap is not that far behind, actually. It's only a tenth and a little bit in arrears at a 19.078. And a couple of PB laps coming through in that last one. The best one of those was Terry Marwood with a 20.9579. And it looks like Termo's through. So what's happened to Marwood? Marwood's had an issue down at turn 1. So no sooner he sets his own personal best lap of the race, but he loses 4th place to Termo. And that's with margin as well. So Termo's got a big margin. So we swap those positions around our leaderboard. So Marwood maintains a nice 39-point margin over the Brett Willis, Brian Walsh and co-battle behind him. And it means Termo now moves up to within striking distance of Glenn Miles and Brett Willis. So all looking very good for car 51 with about 6 laps to go. It is a bit more dramas for Lewis Wedding here. Right, but Brian, and that's a big moment. And that's a really silly bit of driving. I don't know what he was trying to do there, whether he was trying to get out of the way or whether he was trying to go for the inside corner just to sort of get right out the way and let Lewis have the outside line. But whatever he did, ended up in the fence and spat him back out. We saw that in ASR Super 2 the other week. Drivers hitting fences and coming back into the path of other cars. And Marwood's had some further dramas here. He's gone down, almost down his escape road at turn 1. And that promotes Higginson up to 5th place. And Glenn Miles might be in with a sniff here of driving past Terry Marwood on the run to turn 1. If he can think about it under brakes, he's close enough. And Marwood goes straight on, hits the fence, and Miles says thank you very much. So, wondering if Terry's carrying a little bit of damage there. He's gone back to the pits. So, wondering if that's to do some repairs and to get back out on the racetrack or what he's going to do there. But Glenn Miles, opportunistic, there at the right time. Put the pressure on Terry Marwood and wrestles away 6th place. So quick run through the field. Race leader has a huge margin at the moment, 27 seconds. And is pretty much in cruise control here. As he heads down to the hairpin, so he's got 5 laps to run after this one. And Dane Liccardo over a half minute behind. Circuit not favouring the VL, as we expected. We're going to be a Volvo track. He's a comfortable 2nd place at the moment. Lewis Wedding, 3rd place for him. Best lap is a 19.9, and his last lap was actually a bit sluggish. His last lap was a 22.7 to Termo's 20.4. So there might yet be a podium on offer for Termo in this one, if he can keep piling the pressure on. There he is, car 51 just behind. Higginson has had a torrid time in this one and is in 5th place, currently the last car on the lead lap. Glenn Miles has just gone a lap down to the race leader, so he's the first car 1 lap down now, but he's comfortably ahead of John Wright, who's only just coming up to the last corner now to start his 15th lap. And Glenn's halfway around the circuit, so that one I'm not expecting to change anytime soon. And Terry Marwood's got going again. He came into the pits. He's now gone 2 laps down. He's back up and running again. He'll get some more points. Likewise, Brian Munn. He's just exited the pits as well and has gone 3 laps down. And then the only man who has disappeared into the pit lane and not come back is Brian Walsh. But I still have no clue what he is doing at the Supercars presentation dais. Right, we're just ticking off the laps here. The only real battle we're going to start to get interested in is this one, the Lewis Wedding and Termo battle. Let's go on board with Lewis and let's have a look at how he attacks this 2.6k circuit. Coming to the final corner now, and we'll go with an Outworld Broadcasting. Crank it up. Nice onboard sounds there from the Lewis Wedding Mobile. Outworld broadcasting signage and all. Taking us through a nice lap of the Newcastle Street Circuit. Not a bad one as well. It's pretty solid, nice and smooth in all the right positions and all the right apexes. And maintaining that little under a second lead over Termo at the moment. Last laps around for those guys, 20.6 for Lewis Wedding, 20.2 for Termo. So the world's fastest 4x2 brick, as Rhodey is alluding to, is on a charge and is in the game. He's only got 2 more laps to do it. These 2 are the last men on the lead lap, so they'll be able to fight it out till the end of lap 20. Race leader's just commenced his penultimate lap. I'll tell you what though, if you're Dane Liccardo, you're doing 1 minute 21.2s. You don't want to be in 1 minute 21.6, and he's not that far ahead of these guys. He's only 6 seconds up the road. You wouldn't want to be easing off the gas anytime soon or making any mistakes. You want to keep that rhythm and that flow up and keep pressing on. You can see there as he bounced over the humps in the road, same as the cars behind are doing. Oh, and Higginson's had an issue. Higginson's had a coming together. Who's that? Was that Shannon Wright? It is. It is Shannon Wright. So, okay, I don't know what's happened there. If that's a lap traffic scenario or something along the lines there. What it has done is it's put Glenn Miles ahead of Higginson again. And possibly a discussion point after this one's over. I'm not quite sure. We didn't capture that one. You'll see when they flash up on the left-hand side there and they go yellow. They're involved in an incident. It's a yellow flag at that part where that car is. And race leader is now going to commence his final lap. Let's go back to this battle. It's tightened up a little bit. It's now a half of a second. So not much in this. These 2 duking it out for all that it's worth. I agree with you in the live chat, Matt Cecil. I think that one with the Higginson Wright possibly going to be a bit spicy post-race. We'll get the thoughts of both drivers, no doubt. After the second race is over, we'll have them all in here and we'll go from there. And Higginson's involved in another one. So I just saw him flash up Higginson and Miles in that occasion. So again, more drama. Brian Munn, further issues down the road. We're going to keep an eye out for what the race leader's up to. He's got about a half a lap to go. What about this battle over the final spot on the rostrum? It is getting a little bit tighter. He's actually, Wedding's just managed to eke the margin out by another 10th or 2. Terry Marwood's gone back to the pits. So he may need to get out quickly and be classified. I think he'll done enough laps to classify, but man who's won most of the races this season chalks up another one. I've lost count how many this one is. He's well over half the race wins, and it's a big win in the end too. It would have been bigger. It would have been out to over 30 seconds if not for that unusual incident in that one. Liccardo's going to come home for second place, so that's well deserved for him. Higginson's going to be classified 5th, Miles 6th, and Wedding's going to hold off Termo. What a spirited battle between these 2. Just ebbed and flowed, and the margin really never sort of got down to less than a half second. But great job by these 2 to go in for 3rd and 4th. Higginson in 5th already, I guess, pretty much knows I think his championship is over. 6th place finish for Glenn Miles. And then we get through. So John Wright just about to complete his last lap, lap 19. He's 1 lap down. Marwood ended up in the pits, but I think will have done enough to be classified. Brian Munn also. Well, where's he? He's down the escape road, I think, at... where's he? Down the escape road, he's down the escape road at turn 2. Okay, so that's a bit interesting. And then Brian Walsh definitely didn't do enough laps to be classified, so... There's your race winner. Fill in the positions on the running order here so we can get an update as to where everybody sits. So Wright first, Liccardo second. He's still doing some laps here. Wedding in third. Termo fourth. Higginson ended up with fifth place finish after mistake after mistake after mistake. I think we can call for that one for him. Sixth for Glenn Miles. John Wright home in seventh place. Terry Marwood has done enough laps to be classified eighth. Likewise, Brian Munn has done enough laps to be classified in ninth. And sadly, Brian Walsh ends up with a non-finish. And Jamie Nankervis with a did not start. He's actually in the Discord now, I can see, so maybe had an issue and couldn't take the start. So we leave it at that for this one. And now we take a little bit of a breath and we start looking at how this championship looks after the opening race of 2 tonight and who has moved up where in the standings. Now, we're not going to have this on a graphical format on your screen, so just listen and you'll understand where everybody is at. So Shannon Wright leads the championship. He's moved that margin from 29 points out to 41. Of course, there's that little incident we need to have a look at that we didn't quite capture, but we'll see what happens with that. But given the points margin and where he finished in that one, even if they were to deduct him a couple of points for that one, it's still going to be, a 30-point margin at the end of the day. It's currently 41. So Shannon Wright comfortably has a really good buffer here, and all he needs to do in the next race is basically finish. If he finishes, he will take the title. If he doesn't finish, Higginson needs to win the race to take over the title. He would win it then by 9 points, but if Shannon Wright does not finish the race, Higginson needs to finish fourth or lower to take the title. So that's the mathematics behind first and second place. Third and fourth has officially swapped. So John Wright has dropped down to fourth place, and Liccardo now heads the battle for third place by 10 points. So looking at how the point structure is on the points allocation for race 2, there would need to be a difference of 3 positions between Liccardo and Wright to tie. It would need to be 4 positions difference in the standings with Wright in front for him to retain third place. And if it was to go to a tie, honours would go to Dane Liccardo by virtue of the fact he has 3 race wins on the season compared to John Wright's none. Jamie Nankervis, we said, safe in 5th place. He cannot lose any positions to anyone behind, and he cannot gain positions over anybody in front. Terry Marwood, with an 8th place finish, has moved himself 29 points ahead of Brian Walsh, and that was critical for him to finish and for Brian Walsh not to finish, because that means that margin has doubled compared to what it was at the beginning of the night. So it's just a little bit of an insurance policy for Terry Marwood for this next race. If he has a bad start or something goes wrong, he should be able to hang on to 6th place in the standings from Brian Walsh in 7th. Now, Brett Willis, again, he is not here tonight. He is currently on 415 points and is tied in 8th place with Glenn Miles, would you believe? Now, this is where it gets interesting because Brett Willis has a pair of 3rd place finishes and Glenn Miles has a 2nd place finish on the season. So if it stayed where it was, that would be 8th place officially to Glenn Miles in the standings because he has the better finishing position on the season. And Termo's 4th place finish keeps him in the hunt. He is 10th place. He is on 407 points. He is only 8 points behind Glenn Miles and Brett Willis. So that's your top 10. And then outside the 10, Brian Munn stays in 12th place. And if he has a decent result in the next race, he could theoretically jump ahead of Dylan Cole, but he needs a finish that would give him more than 20 points. And if he needs to do that, he basically just needs to, in a field of the amount of cars that are here at the moment, he pretty much just needs to finish in 9th place and he'll have enough points to jump ahead. So that's definitely achievable for Brian Munn. And then Lewis Wedding, because he's only done a couple of rounds, he only had done the Bahrain round, actually, was the only round he's completed. He has, with the third place finish tonight, that's actually his third podium finish out of 3 races that he has contested. So that's a nice little finishing record there. And that actually moves him ahead of Rob Crisdale, or Oz Rob in the standings, actually puts him into 19th place. And with another nice finish, he'll actually jump ahead of a few other drivers, such as Lime Mitch and Craig Laws, who we haven't seen Craig Laws for a while. We saw Lime Mitch last week. And if he gets a decent enough finish, let's say he gets another third place finish, he's actually going to jump ahead of Luke Rosella. And that'll put him up to 17th place. So that would be something I think Rosella, who's probably off watching something on iRacing at the moment, will probably be fuming about if Lewis manages to get another third place finish. I mean, even if he doesn't finish in third place, all that he needs to do to finish ahead of Rosella is basically to finish in ninth place, I think it is. Yes, ninth place finish will be enough. So even Lewis just needs to finish this race, and he'll finish ahead of Rosella, despite only completing less races than Rosella has this year. So do your math on that one, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we've got a couple more minutes to wait until we get the second race underway. We will take our final pit stop for the night, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes with the reverse grid, race 2. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about set for race number 2 here. Just in the last few seconds of getting ready for this reverse grid race. So you can see here the grid order. So front row is Brian Munn and John Wright. Of course, they've done enough laps to be classified in that one. And directly behind them, you've got Glenn Miles and Nathan Higginson. So Higginson starting from what is 4th place on this grid. So a little bit better position compared to Shannon Wright. So a good start here for him would be critical. And you've got Glenn Miles alongside him as well. So that's a 3rd place starter. Then you've got the next row of Termo and Lewis Wedding. Then Dane Liccardo and Shannon Wright. And then behind them, we've got Terry Marwood. So he obviously, or maybe he hadn't done enough laps to be classified in that one, because it's put him a bit further down the grid. So we might have to get some confirmation from John Wright what he's going to get for that one. And then alongside Terry, you've got Brian Walsh. That's the blue car there at the back. And then you've got Jamie Nankervis dead set rear of grid next door to the safety car. All right, here we go. Last race of this year's championship, race number 29 for the season. Away we go. Pretty decent launch by the front two. Higginson got a good run as well. Is he going to split the middle, or is he going to go with somebody? He decides to flip to the inside, and there's a bit of checking up. There's people pushing and shoving, and there's a bit of rear contact. And there's someone's around. It's Liccardo that's around at the back. Walsh is around at the back. Marwood's around at the back. There's a bit of a calamity going on. I'm not sure who the perpetrator in that one was, but there was a bit of push and shove at the opening couple of corners. Munn leads, Higginson second, Wedding third, Shannon Wright in fourth place. Let's get the safety car off the track and let's get back to the action to see what's going on. Munn hits the wall! Munn hits the wall hard! And Higginson and Wedding escape. Wright gets through. There goes Glenn Miles. And going the wrong way, that, in my opinion, that's almost a disqualification. You're going up the track like that. And that's dangerous. And Termo has had to take an evasive action there. In my mind, that is a penalty every day of the week. And I would not be surprised to see that in this one. Now, it looks like Jamie Nankervis, even though he was on the grid and in the Discord, looks like that car has not started again. So, just the 10 runners. But now Higginson to the lead with Wedding behind. Shannon Wright in third place. So, a couple of podium sitters from race 1 up there. Championship contender in P1. Now, Shannon Wright doesn't need to do anything silly here. He can afford to go, but he doesn't need to do anything silly, especially if Higginson's going to be right out sideways at turn 1. And now under siege. Having to take the defensive line. Slow it right down. Wedding goes through. Around the outside, just like the Buffalo Bills go right around the outside at turn number 2. And now it's all about floating the car down through the S's and now into these tight 90-degree right-handers with a little bit of an incentive sometimes to try and put some power down to the ground a bit earlier, but you don't want to do that. And Higginson just overcooks it at turn 8. And that just gives Shannon Wright the run. That just gives him the run that he needs. And easy pickings. And I think this title race is almost over. That's a little bit close. Now, if Higginson's here, I would probably just have to try and stay as close as you can to Shannon Wright. Just put the pressure on him. Put the blowtorch on him. Try and force him into a mistake that's catastrophic without making contact. Termo's managed to get through on Brian Walsh. And Walsh has gone deep at the hairpin. And Ricardo's managed to recover after everything that happened a bit further on. Oh, that's Wedding. And that's Lewis Wedding who's hit the wall at turn 1. So not the only victim to have issues there tonight. There's been plenty of them. And that drops him off the podium. Terry Marwood in 5th place. And Glenn Miles and Termo behind. So Volvo's leading the way. And then 5th, 6th and 7th in the running order. But all 10 runners that took the start still running at the moment. Glenn Miles is starting to get the hurry up here from Termo, and this is critical for these guys. And that's a very, very big brain move, as Matt Cecil would have put it in the chat for one of the other moves a bit earlier on. A very, very big brain and opportunistic move from Termo down the inside of turn 8. Job done. 6th place is his at the moment. He can set out after Terry Marwood. Right, so plugging all the equations as they currently sit right now into this one. Let's get a handle on where everybody is in the running order and how this works. So Sixth place finish at the moment is where Termo currently sits. Glenn Miles is currently P7. I'll tell you what, Termo needs one more spot here. Wedding's now gone through into third place, so it's another mistake from Higginson. Marwood won't be too far away either. They're just coming back to Termo. He's going to need to hunt down Terry Marwood here, and he's going to need to hunt him down in a hurry and try and wrestle that gap down as much as he can, because right now as it stands, Termo being in 6th place and Glenn Miles in 7th, Glenn Miles is going to come out on top for the battle for 7th place, 7th and 8th. He's going to come out on top by 3 points. So Marwood's now closing in on the back of Higginson, and they're in pretty close proximity. And then you can just see Termo just starting to pop into frame and back a shot. You'll see him as they start to come down the hill into the hairpin. Oh, Higginson got the wall. And he's gone straight on. There's Terry Marwood. And this time there's a little bit of gap left. And there's Termo, you can see right there. So Marwood up to 4th place on the running order, and Higginson down to 5th. Liccardo's now moved up to 2nd place after all that calamity. All right, and a little bit of boxing on at turn 1. That's all fair. And they all managed to get through. I wonder if Higginson's just a little bit overcommitted here. He's really starting to hold Marwood up now, starting to push him back into Termo. Termo's starting to get some really good purchase here. Higginson is way loose. He is having a real fight with this VL at the minute to just stay on the track surface. And here's Termo latched on now to the back of Terry Marwood. And here's his view over his right shoulder of what he sees ahead as the battle between cars 10 and car 00 unfolds in front of him. You see Higginson just pulls away a bit here, so the VL's got the legs at this part of the circuit to pull away, but this is part where the Volvo makes up its ground in the mid-corner and on the change direction. So there's a lot riding on this battle here. 22.6 for Higginson, 23.6 for Marwood, 21.6 for Termo. So PB for Higo. Guys behind reeled in. You can see there both Higginson and Marwood were missing the apex completely at turn 2 as well. So Termo's got the eyes on, got the lights on too actually. And now Higginson's just starting to edge away a little bit here, leaving Marwood to start taking a couple of second looks in his rearview mirror here. Wide again as the cars swing onto Scott Street. And Termo's got a really good run here. He's got a super run. You can't do much with it. Will he pull the trigger down at the hairpin at turn 11? Or does he think better of it? And he's just lost a little bit of a car length or two here. But he had a super run out of the left-hander coming up into Parnell Place. Just couldn't press on with it. So fastest lap was Shannon Wright at a 1:19.2, was immediately surpassed by Lewis Wedding at an 18.9. PB for Higginson, 20.0. These guys behind in the low 21s. So he has started to pull away. He was going to be safe from Liccardo behind in the battle for 2nd and 3rd overall anyway. It's just all about finishing at this point, I think. He's got a long way to go still, 2/3 of the race. But the interesting part, the gap in front between Wright and Liccardo hasn't been going up at a vast rate of knots. It went up by a second the last lap, but 7 laps in, it's not too bad. And of course, Wright doesn't really need to take any undue risk here. He's got a lot of points buffer. Doesn't need to do anything silly. Likewise, Liccardo. Liccardo's got no reason to, I guess, worry too much here. If he finishes where he is right now, even if he finishes on the podium, he has got third place in the championship in the bag. And of course, Lewis Wedding's no stranger to throwing the kitchen sink at things too. He's got nothing to lose. And right now stands to gain a nice little chunk of points. I mean, even if he was to get a second place finish in this one, it's not going to move him up the order any further than what he currently already is with a third place finish. Currently gives him 80 points for the round, moves him up to 16th overall on the points table. We'll do a final points wrap up at the end of the night, just based on tonight's activities. Of course, they're all subject to any penalties to be reviewed. And behind them, here comes this other little train. Higginson, Marwood, Turmo. Now, Turmo's just dropped a little bit of length here as these guys come into the hairpin. What did Higginson do on the last lap around? So, Liccardo and Wedding pretty well matched that last lap around. What is it this time? 22.6, 21.2, 22.0. So Turmo had a bad lap. Higginson had a bad lap. And Marwood had a good lap. And Higginson's down the escape road at 1. And you could see that unfolding. It wiggled under brakes. He thought about taking the shortcut line through turn 1. But he decided against it and decided to go down the escape road. So that means Marwood inherits 4th place as it stands right now. It means Higginson moves down to 6th place and it puts Turmo up into 5th. Now for Turmo, that is an important position for him because it puts him in a tie with Glenn Miles for what is currently 7th place in the standings, but the tiebreaker, which means it would be 7th place going to Turmo, by virtue of more second place podium finishes. He has 3 on the season compared to Miles's 1. So that would be honours for Turmo in that one if it was to stay where it is right now. So all these different little points permutations unfolding as the race continues to evolve and people hit walls and people make mistakes. The only one that could be of benefit to Turmo now is that if he gets past Terry Marwood, then he would have 7th place outright. What it means for Glenn Miles is he needs to find a way past Nathan Higginson, or he needs to hope that Higginson can somehow claw his way back to the Turmo and Terry Marwood battle and wrestle away 6th place from Turmo. Now Higginson, actually speaking of, has had another issue. Went down the escape road at turn 2. So that last statement I just made is looking a little bit unlikely to happen, especially if he keeps making mistakes like that. But what it does do for Glenn Miles is it puts him a little bit closer to the rear bumper of Higginson. And the car doesn't sound all that happy, I guess, at the moment. Can sound it through, he's in a higher gear here going through the right and left 90-degree bends. He's revving it all the way out to the rev range, though. And there's a couple of changes we're just noticing on the side of screen there. So Marwood and Turmo had a bit of an exchange of down at the hairpin and then back again. They just flipped one way and then flipped the other way. So Turmo having a dip here. Had a little bit of a look and couldn't quite make it happen. Good fair battle. Higginson 1 minute 27. This race has not gone according to plan for him. Now, the battle for second place is still getting rather interesting, and it's now about to unfold with some lap traffic in the way, and Brian Munn has had a massive issue there, and I think maybe that's just unsettled Liccardo a bit, not knowing where to go and what to pick, and that lets Wedding through. And now Wedding's having a hard time trying to get past Brian Munn, who's not making it easy. Yeah, lap down Brian, let him go. That's a smart thing to do there. Just get out the way, let him go. And let's see what happens on the run up Watt Street. Listen to the engine and listen to the wheel spin. There it is, just a little bit of engine wheel spin as it bumps over the bumps. See that VL getting a bit closer in the rear window of Wedding's car. We go to the opposite car as they head down the hill, down towards the left-hand bend they're about to take here onto Zara Street. It's turn 6. Turn 7 brings them onto Scott Street, and then turn 8 will bring them onto the back part of the course heading down toward the hairpin. Now Wedding's escaped here. You can see he's just managed to pull about a dozen car lengths or so in the last little bit, and he's making a break for it here. And Liccardo overcommits again. So that's just, that time around it was just an out-braking move. And on the previous occasion it was probably a bit of a distractionary thing from Brian Munn, who, to be fair to the guys that were involved in the incident on the opening lap, I think probably deserves a disqualification for driving the wrong way on the circuit, and also the unsafe flick spin that put Turmo in danger too. So we'll wait to see what happens after this. We can only call the racing as it is broadcast and as they finish. So Brian Walsh about to go another lap down to the race leader. And another battle here unfolding. So another attempt by Turmo to unseat Terry Marwood's 4th place at turn 2. Got alongside, Marwood left him some space, but it didn't quite come off. So this is now officially the closest battle on the track. And there's still the better part of 7 laps to go in this one for these two. Much the same way that Turmo and Wedding were duking it out in the closing stages of race number 1. A pair of Volvos duking it out, not for a podium spot, but duking it out for pride. Oh, and Walsh is in the fence, so what's he done there? Is he just ploughed straight on? Yep, just probably took a little bit too much mid-corner speed. And I think it's just a salvage operation for Walsh, this one, just to try and finish the race. Some fire belching from the exhaust under that XD Falcon. Looking forward to seeing an XD Falcon in the improved production Victorian Club Championship in a couple of weeks at Sandown Raceway. Not sure if they're allowing spectators in, but if they are, get down there and have a look at a really nicely presented XD Falcon. And this one, in the hands of Walsh, doesn't seem to be going anywhere fast and seems to be a gearbox gremlin, and I think that's probably going to be his day over and done with. So disappointing end for Brian Walsh. Liccardo on for a second podium here. He's just steadily been losing touch with Lewis Wedding over the course of the race since he was passed. And we're now plugging in our non-finish for Brian Walsh. So it means 434 points for him. So he was up in what was 7th place in the championship after the last round. So he's had a pretty big fall from grace by not being able to score too many points. Actually, we're not going to plug in a non-finish because he's currently 10th place and 3 laps down. If he manages to keep going he will hang on to, actually, well, it will be 7th place because of the issues that the other drivers have had. So we'll see how he goes, but he's got to get to the flag. He's got to keep going. Right, so this Marwood and Turmo battle still raging on. There's another battle that's a bit close as well. With all the mistakes that Higginson's been making, Glenn Miles has been able to make a little bit of headway. In actual fact, Glenn Miles set a PB on the last lap as well at a 120.888. So his fastest lap coming on lap 14. And Shannon Wright has just completed lap 15. So Miles the last man on the lead lap. And Glenn Miles was a full 0.6 of a second quicker than Higginson last time around, and you can see him there. He's just within visual range here. And we've really got to keep paying attention to the laps that Higginson does, because it's very important for Glenn Miles to get into that 6th place finish if Turmo cannot get past Terry Marwood. Oh, big tip from Miles. A little bit low on the brakes, and I reckon that might be the end of his attempt to get past Nathan Higginson. He's got to get reverse, get him back a bit. There you go. And get going again. But that's very, very costly. And you can see there, Higginson just had a really poor lap of 126.9. Glenn Miles, this lap's going to be worse. It's probably going to be a mid-30s now. He's going to be some, 20 seconds behind, 35.5. So a long way in arrears now, really relying on a big mistake from car 00, which he just got. So there's Higginson thinking he's home free for 6th place. Makes a mistake. Hands some of the advantage back to Miles. Not all of it. But a small free kick for Glenn Miles in this one. Let's go back up and have a look and see the rest of the field. Let's do a quick cleanse through the field and see where we all stand. So 10-second lead for Shannon Wright. Really doesn't need to push the envelope. Hasn't broken into the 1 minute 18s this time around, and he really doesn't need to. He can afford to cruise it from here. Lewis Wedding 10 seconds behind. Still pushing hard. Not sort of doing the same lap times that Shannon Wright's doing, but out there pushing the BMW for all that it's worth. Liccardo about 4.5 seconds in arrears on the same lap in 3rd place. The Terry Marwood Turmo battle still raging. Turmo still has not been able to find a way past car number 10 just yet. They're about to tackle Brian Munn for the umpteenth time tonight. Let's stay with them for a second, see how this all unfolds. There they go. Do they manage to get through on Munn? Not before the next corner. Quick cleanse. Higginson 6th place. Glenn Miles 7th place, heading down the hill. John Wright's first car 1 lap down. And then you've got Brian Munn and Brian Walsh. The last 2 cars 1 lap down. Terry just trying to get a bit of a slipstream there from the Brian Munn mobile to see if he could do anything on the main straight. It hasn't really helped him very much. Now heading up the hill and into turn 2. So Glenn Miles, here we go, it's happened. Glenn Miles has found himself ahead of Nathan Higginson. And he just needs to get round that corner. Yes, he's done it. So Turmo got a free kick, and then he got an early Christmas present, I think, with Higginson going off the road or having an incident somewhere. The position has changed hands. And for Turmo, he now has to get past Terry Marwood to make this work for him, because for Glenn Miles, the 6th place finish is enough to keep him ahead by a mere 5 points in the championship. So now it is over to you, Mr. Lego Man, to see what you can do. Oh no, there's been a big incident. So Higginson and Miles have had an incident at turn number 2. Now, the race leader was involved in this as well, I think, or maybe he was caught up in it. So Miles is in the fence. Higginson has gone and through, maybe believing he's in the right here. And Shannon Wright was caught up in this as well. I saw him going through. I'm not sure whether he was involved or not, but he was definitely in that frame as we cut to the incident happening. So that now swings it back the other way. Higginson now goes back to 6th place. Miles goes to 7th, albeit with a question mark over his head. Actually, question mark over both the gentlemen in 5th and 6th places. Sorry, 6th and 7th places heads at the moment. I don't know where to look at the moment. So that one is a big one. Now, considering that Higginson has just taken off after that incident, says to me that he believes that he is in the right there. But the final lap for the final race of the season is underway, and there's another car off the road here. I can hear it at turn 2, and it's Walsh. Oh, and that's in a really bad position as well. Needs to get a gear and get going and fast, because he's got cars coming around the corner. There goes Wedding, there goes Higginson. Mercado won't be too far behind him either, but Walsh has had a pretty big incident down there at turn 2. So 13 wins on the season, and now it changes again. Wow, Higginson, another issue. Miles goes through. It swings the other way again for that little battle in the championship. This has been a calamity tonight, let's just say that. What's not been a calamity is this man's season. 14 race wins from the 29 starts, including tonight. Only missed 2 full rounds. Didn't start one race and has finished on the podium in just about every other. And he is the ACADS champion in ATCC touring cars. Shannon Wright, well done and thoroughly deserved. But you didn't deserve to hit the tyre barrier then. That was just a bit silly. Lewis Wedding gets a podium. He gets another podium finish. So a 2nd place finish for Lewis Wedding. 4 podiums from the 4 races that he actually contested this season. And he's happy with that. And he gets a bit of a bumping by Brian Walsh. Dane Liccardo, 3rd place finish for him. More than enough to secure 3rd place overall in the championship. And Terry Marwood has gotten 4th place finish here ahead of Termo, but not by very much. So again, as we said, that was very critical for how that finished, because Glenn Miles, by finishing in 6th place, will get the 8th place finish honours after this one is done and dusted. Higginson with the 7th place finish. John Wright is 8th. Now, Brian Munn has not finished, so his class is a non-finish, but it won't be credited with, I'm not sure how this works with the 9th place finish and the 10th place finish for Brian Walsh, but we're going to assume that it is a 10th place finish as it is for Brian Walsh, but the non-finish means you don't get points. We'll assume that, and we'll go from there. But now the fun part becomes we have to wait for everybody to sort themselves out and collect their thoughts after that one. I think everybody's happy to see the back of this one. Not only this round, but the back of this season. It's been a long season, starting all the way back in September. And it now finishes at the beginning of February in what can only be described as a very chaotic season finale. So while all the drivers get themselves ready to come and pay us a visit here in the commentary box after everything's all done, there's a few drivers that are still doing a few celebratory donuts, and you can tell there's a few guys just already starting to make their way up to see us. We're just starting to tot up the points here and see where everybody sits after that one. And we've got a few drivers already locked into some of these finishing positions as they stand anyway. We're just looking through the order to see who's moved up the order. We can see there's definitely been a lot of moving especially in that second half of that last race. There's a lot of positions changed hands as it all went on. And we're starting to get the gentleman filtering through here at the moment. Just waiting on the last one. And I believe we'll have Dane Liccardo in just a moment. There he is. All right, so what we will do is we'll start by talking to some of the second and third place getters in this one. And the podium was actually shared between 3 drivers in this one, which has happened on a couple of occasions this year, plenty of occasions in fact, where the same 3 drivers occupied the podium positions, not necessarily in the same order. We might start with Lewis Wedding. Lewis, a pretty decent run by your standards. We've been remarking that out of the 4 races you've run this season, which was not too many because you had some other commitments to worry about as well, alongside with being with me in the box for the first half of the season, 4 races and 4 podium finishes. Not a bad return.
Yeah, not a bad return at all. I certainly wasn't expecting one in race 1 tonight, but I'll certainly take it.
Well, I think some of the best bits of your driving out of that one were your situational awareness in some of the circumstances where there was a bit of lap traffic and where there was a few accidents, and some of your starts were pretty good as well. Talk us through some of the battles you had. One of the best one I think we've seen in race 1 was with Turmo right to the very end, which sort of went both ways. There wasn't much passing involved, but it was almost a stalemate in the end. And the other one was between yourself and Dane in race 2.
Yeah, they're both really good battles. I ended up, I don't know if there was damage or whatever that slowed me down in race 1 because I did get caught up with some guys spinning in front of me and stuff like that. But I just focused on just trying to not throw it into a fence in race number 1. And I knew Turmo was behind me, and I think there was one chance he had. Probably it would have started. I ran a little bit wide at the hairpin with a few laps to go, and he was able to close up, but he couldn't quite get the run out of the final corner or turn 1, so I was able to hold on there and just hold on for a podium. And then race number 2, Dane was doing a really good job early on. Unfortunately, I stuffed my own race after I'd got myself into the lead, and then just rookied it into turn 1. Although these cars were a bit odd, but I did make drastic setup changes between the 2 races. So in the first race, I had a really stiff car. Race number 2, I had a soft car, and I was able to attack turn 1 a bit better, and that enabled me to battle with Dane. Because if I had have used the setup from race number 1, I would have been a second a lap, slower, or 0.8 a lap slower. And to Dane's credit, he did a really good job. He didn't really make a mistake on his part. It was just more so a bit of lap traffic in front sort of caught him out a little bit, and he was caught in 2 wides in the hairpin, and I was able to sneak by. And his tyres fell off in race 1, and they did again in race 2, so I was just able to drive away. But outside of that, I mean, he didn't really put a foot wrong, and I think we were slowly, maybe every now and again, just edging closer towards Shannon, but I think our race start sort of stuffed us up to ruin what could have been a 3-way battle. But just early on cost us. But yeah, it was good fun to be out there, and well done to Shannon, and well done to Dane as well. He drove really well too. Yeah, completely agree. We did capture that precise moment you were referring to just then, just down at the hairpin with a bit of lap traffic for Brian Munn, and sort of Dane just had a bit of an issue deciding what direction he wanted to go, and we'll have a chat to him in just a moment. And you're right, probably cost him a good shot at second place there, but good to see you back out there. Good to see you bolstering the field for the end of the season. And like I said, 4 podiums from 4 races contested is a pretty decent return. Well done, mate. Yeah, and I'll certainly take that. Good start to 21. Absolutely. Over to Dane Liccardo. The other man who had a second place finish in race 1 and a third place finish in race 2 was the opposite way around to Lewis Wedding. And the good news for you, mate, is you've secured third place in the championship with those 2 results tonight. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to say thank you to Lewis for the great racing, and the hairpin just locked the brake.
Talk us about that one too, actually, because you were in the battle zone. You were locked in combat there with Lewis Wedding. You ended up with a bit of lap traffic that Brian sort of had a bit of an awkward moment coming down into the hairpin, and it sort of looked, from my perspective, like it put you in 2 minds about whether to go for the inside or go for the outside, and at the end you pinched a brake, and I guess that did the job for you.
Well, I was initially going to go down the inside, and the last second I saw Brian duck to the inside, so I tried to dart to the outside to not hit him, and pinched a brake, and all it was. and was gone. I could not catch Lewis.
Yeah, no, you're right. As soon as Lewis was past, it was a bit of he sort of buggered off into the distance, as I would call it, and sort of left you behind a bit.
Well, I didn't really try and catch him because, as Lewis said, I knew the tyres were going to drop off. So my main goal was just trying to hold on to third to get third in the championship.
Yep, and you did a pretty good job of that too. Just drove pretty cleanly and pretty smartly after that point. You were one of the victims at turn one, though. Quite a lot of people had the incident at turn one. And talk to us about that race start in race number 2, because there was definitely a few people caught up at after that with a bit of push and shove. What was your perspective on that one?
Well, I got the best start of my best start of the night, and I've gone to duck down the inside, and I don't know if I got hit or hit the tyre bundle, but yeah, just went in there, and the next minute I know I'm facing the wrong way. I can tell I wasn't very happy.
No.
Nor did I think I'd get to where I was.
No, I can probably imagine you probably weren't happy with that one, and we didn't quite capture the incident on the broadcast, but we did see the aftermath. So I'd imagine that's probably going to be looked at in a post-race review just to see how all that pans out. But I don't think it's going to change the result tonight. You had the third place championship pretty much sewn up after the opening race. You were 10 points in front, and you've marched on and solidified that in race 2. Well done, mate.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the season.
No worries, mate. Pleasure. Before we go to the race 1 and 2 winner, we might have a quick moment to have a chat to the man who finished in second place overall in the championship. Of course, Dane Liccardo was third overall. And over to Nathan Higginson. Nathan, not your night this one, mate. Didn't go according to plan from the moment the qualifying flag dropped.
Not at all, honestly. That's no matter how much practice I put in, I wasn't able to gel with the track or the car. Couldn't get the setup correct, and there's not much else to say to that, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I can tell in the tone of your voice that it just didn't go your way. What was it? What do you feel it was in the track? Do you think it was just of course, for the last couple of weeks, we've been saying that we believed that the last 2 tracks in the season were going to favour the Volvo, and you did your best to sort of put that theory to bed in race 1 at Winton last time out. But I think tonight really showed it definitely was a track we were expecting the Volvo to do well at. Was it just a combination of the fact it's a very bumpy street circuit? It's one of those awkward things that the VL just doesn't really seem to have a strong point apart from the first 2 straights.
Yeah, I guess it's the straights were probably its strong point, but I guess the braking zones, especially at the hairpin and the run down the backside of the circuit down through the S's, especially how bumpy it was, it kind of gave it a disadvantage, whereas the Volvo had the advantage being short and nimble, I guess. Yeah, it's just that, and it's I guess it's not really a power circuit, so it doesn't really suit the VL.
Yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head there with the difference in the power track versus the mid corner pace of the Volvo was all it was. But look, I just
can't get over how frustrating it is.
Yep, I can
tell. The gap was 29 points, and you look at the gap now. Although, as I was about to say, props to Shannon for winning for taking the title, and thanks to John Wright for running it.
Well, take nothing away from it. We look at this from this point of view. You've got 4 wins, all of them coming in the last sort of half of the season, or last third of the season rather. You've got 7 podiums throughout the season, 61 points behind a dominant car. Is nothing to be frowned upon, and I guess
not as many points as I thought it was.
No, and the one thing I guess you take out of it, you're only one of 2 people in the series to contest every round, and when you contest every round and show up and continue to score points, and the good thing for you is you showed up and you scored points in every race, you weren't disqualified or didn't finish any other races, it usually bodes pretty well for your standings, and you've proven it's in the top 3. So hold your head high, mate, and well done on second place in the series.
Thanks, Nella.
Well, over to the man who dominated this season, won the pair of races tonight, and giving him a total of 14 wins for the season, along with 8 other podium finishes. So 14 plus 8 is 22. Didn't start 5 races this season, so make that 27 out of 29. And then the other 2 finishes were a 5th and a 6th place. Shannon, congratulations. How on earth did you keep the consistency up across the season? And I'm taking it maybe he's off having a celebratory drink. I don't know where he is in a minute. Here he is. He's back. He's back. Okay. We'll repose the question.
I have my microphone off because I've got voice activated and I can hear you talking. I thought I'd better just push it up so I don't interrupt.
That's all right.
Mate, absolutely. I'm stuffed, dude. I think my missus is trying to make me lose weight, so she turned the air conditioner off about halfway through that race and made me sweat it out. But hats off to everyone. Awesome series. Loved it. Great bunch of guys to race with. And, the quality of racing towards the end really showed that what we were doing towards the end with the penalties and everything like that really made it for a great race.
Yeah, it certainly did. The race 1 for you looked like it was pretty much a walk in the park. You had a 30-second lead at one point. There was, of course, an incident that you were caught up in. Ended up winning it by 20 at the flag. But as you said, now we understand the reason why you weren't that far ahead of everybody else in race 2, because you were having to earn it by virtue of a weight loss program by the sound of it.
And mate, I think I copped a hell of a lot of damage in those few hits. I couldn't get anything under the 19s.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then you missed out on the fastest lap in that race too by about 0.2 of a second as a result. But look, the dominant car across the season, dominant driver across the season. Apart from the 2 races, so the 2 rounds rather that you missed out on, being Phillip Island and Lakeside, and of course the one race that you did not start in the Gold Coast, which was of course the very important round that you had to spend some time with your wife, but still turned up for the second race. Season's been amazing. Only off the podium on 2 occasions is a phenomenal effort, and I think we all say a thoroughly deserving championship victory. So well done, and looking forward to seeing what you come up with next.
Thanks very much, mate. I know we could have won it just on points, but mate, I'm a racer. I enjoy having fun with these guys, and I was just giving it my all, dude. It was awesome. Absolutely loved it. And thanks very much for all the commentate, mate. You've done an awesome job promoting us. Love sitting back watching YouTube and with the wife and all that. And then she goes, "It's only a game," but as she gets into it, she's going, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." John, mate, hats off to you. Awesome series, dude. You've done a great job with all the tracks and that. And look forward to the next one to be a part of, mate.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, what we'll do before we finish out tonight is we'll have a look at where the final standings all sit. Now, of course, this is pre any post-race investigations that need to happen. Of course, there was a fair bit of shenanigans in both races tonight. So this is the standings based on where everything sits at present. So everybody understands where everything's at now. I'm just having a bit of a moment here, just trying to make sure that we've got everybody in the right positions. There's a couple that were yet to be filled out. So, of course, the results from race 2 with Shannon Wright first, Wedding second, and Dane Liccardo third. 4th went to Terry Marwood, 5th to Termo, 6th to Glenn Miles, 7th to Higginson, and then 8th went to John Wright. So that's just the last one that I needed to pop into position on that one there. And what we'll do is we'll bring it up on the screen here with the final standings, and we'll start with the guys that finished up at the bottom end of the point standings, and we'll work our way forward. So you can see here, these are some of the guys that didn't turn up for the better part of the back end of the season. So, of course, Steve Guyatt, Dave Davidson, Sean Bolton, Matty Cowley and Kobe Bolton. A lot of those guys came in and formed a bit of a team with some of the Nissan Skylines. Most of the time we saw them was around the Phillip Island round, the Gold Coast round, Barbagallo. They only contested a handful of the rounds, so that's why they ended up down the standings as far as they did. You can see Bailey Northcote all the way from the very opening 2 rounds were the only times that we got a chance to see him. Likewise, Brock Harvey, he popped into the series in the Simmons Plains round and did Barbagallo as well, and didn't continue on after that point. And Brendan Ross, much the same, only contested a handful of rounds as well. So that's the bottom of the nearly 30 drivers. Over the page we go to the second lot, so 11th through to 20th. There was a bit of movement in this one. The big one was Lewis Wedding. Of course, he was outside the top 20 at the night began. He now moved all the way up to 16th place and ahead of Luke Rosella after that one was all over and done with. So that's officially on the record, and I'm sure he'll be pretty happy with that. He contested less races than Rosella and finished ahead of him on the standings. So there's a bit of friendly banter between those guys. Scotty Nolan was in there as well. He had some pretty good runs early on when he turned up to race Barbagallo and Simmons Plains. Very, very quick out of the box. He actually had 4 podium finishes in a row, including 2 wins, and didn't continue on with the series. Brian Munn, you can see, dropped out of the top 10 last round rather, and has remained outside of the top 10. Unfortunately for him, I still think he's going to end up with a big penalty coming his way from that second race going the wrong direction on track, and then the unsafe resumption. But we'll let the stewards work that one out. And then on to the top 10 as it stands. So you can see here, this was the final margin in the end. So Shannon Wright with a 61-point victory in the championship over Nathan Higginson. Dane Liccardo solidifying third. He ended up 27 points ahead of John Wright after that one, after starting the night 8 points in arrears. Nankervis was safe in 5th place to begin with after the beginning of the night, and he didn't move up and he didn't lose any points to the guys behind. Marwood, by continuing to finish both races tonight, he finished in 6th place and insulated himself from the charging brigade behind. Have a look at this. Brian Walsh, Glenn Miles and Termo all within 9 points of each other, and those finishing positions in that last race with Glenn Miles getting home for 6th place and Termo not being able to get past Terry Marwood means that Glenn Miles hangs on to 8th place. That would have been a tiebreaker situation going to Termo if he had been able to get past Marwood. And they managed to jump Brett Willis at the end of it all, who wasn't able to make it up tonight. And he finished in 10th place, the last spot in the top 10. Well, for us guys, that is the end of the AC Aussie Down Under series and the end of the ATCC series. Keep an eye out for what the guys happen next. I believe the group is going through a little bit of a rebrand to Aussie Motorsport League, so keep an eye out on the Facebook and the Discords and all those sorts of things to see what the guys come up with next for their next season. The next things you're going to see on this channel in about a month and a half's time is the ASR Supercars Championship kicking off on the 19th of March around the streets of Adelaide for a 10 race season. We broadcast this little of information last week, and we are getting close to getting ready to go racing. We've actually filled up the last remaining spots on this grid, so this is technically a full grid. First time in Supercars history for the group that they've actually had a full grid, not just for Supercars, but for the subsequent Super 2 series as well. So congrats and a big hats off to the guys at ASR, Australasian Sim Racing, and to all the guys that are signed up for both series. We're looking forward to some really high quality driving over the 10 rounds that are ahead. So the Supercars is on this channel, Outworld Broadcasting, Super 2 on the Loose Sim Network, and then the other part of the puzzle that's missing is the Supercars Enduro Cup in the September and October time slot, which will be here on Outworld Broadcasting as well. From myself, Steve DeVries, thank you very much to everybody who watched this series across the 4 months that it was contested, and looking forward to your viewership moving forward for the rest of this year. Please drive safely, guys. See you soon. Bye for now.